Grandma left my brother a fancy apartment, and me, an old wreck. My husband yelled, "You're such a loser," and threw me out. I went to that house, opened the door, and was stunned, because under the old rug I found. The eviction notice trembled in Claire's fingers like a dead leaf. 24 hours, that's all Derek had given her before he wanted her gone from their cramped apartment above the laundromat. The paper smelled like his cheap aftershave and broken promises. 3 days earlier, she'd sat in that lawyer's office with the squeaky leather chairs, listening to Grandma Eleanor's will being read. Marcus had practically skipped out of their downtown condo, marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, the golden boy getting his golden prize. Claire got the house on Maple Street, the one with the sagging porch and peeling paint that everyone whispered about at family gatherings. Poor Eleanor's old place, they'd say, shaking their heads like it was some kind of family embarrassment. Derek had exploded in the parking lot, his face turning that ugly shade of purple it got when his get-rich-quick schemes fell apart. This time, it was some vitamin supplement pyramid that had eaten their savings and maxed out 3 credit cards. "You worthless piece of garbage," he'd screamed right there between the parked cars. "How do you screw up dying? Your own grandmother thinks you're such a loser she gives you the house nobody wants." Standing there with her single suitcase and a trash bag of clothes, Claire felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, more like hatching. Derek was already gone, probably to his buddy's couch where he'd spend the day complaining about his disappointing wife. The cab driver kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror as they drove through Riverside's older neighborhoods. When they pulled up to 1247 Maple Street, he whistled low under his breath. "Lady, you sure about this address? Place looks like it's been empty since the Carter administration." But as Claire stood on the buckled sidewalk, staring up at the Victorian house with its broken shutters and wild front garden, something stirred in her belly. Not fear, excitement. Like opening a present you weren't sure you wanted. The brass key slid into the lock like it had been waiting for her touch. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of afternoon light, and the air tasted like old roses and forgotten secrets. Not the death smell she'd expected, but something warmer, lived in. Claire's footsteps echoed on hardwood floors that, under their coating of neglect, looked solid as bedrock. The walls were papered in faded florals that probably cost more per roll than she made in a week at her bookkeeping job. Crown molding ran along the ceilings like fancy frosting on a wedding cake. The living room stopped her cold. Furniture sat under white sheets like sleeping giants, and dominating the center of the space was a Persian rug that definitely didn't belong in a worthless house. The thing was gorgeous, deep burgundy and gold in patterns that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Something about that rug nagged at her brain. It was positioned weird, not quite centered, with one corner folded back like someone had lifted it recently and hadn't bothered to smooth it down properly. Claire knelt beside the rug, running her palms across the intricate weave. Under her touch, the fabric felt expensive, the kind of thing you see roped off in museums. When she lifted the folded corner, her breath caught. The floorboards underneath were different, newer wood forming a perfect square about 3 feet across, and they sat just slightly higher than the surrounding floor, like a lid. Her fingers found a small brass ring set flush with one of the boards. When she pulled, the entire section lifted easily, revealing a cavity carved into the floor joists below. A metal strongbox sat nestled inside, along with manila envelopes and rolls of paper tied with ribbon that had faded from red to pink. The box was heavier than it looked, and something rattled inside when she lifted it. Coins, maybe, or jewelry. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs as she carried everything to the kitchen table, her hands actually shaking. The kitchen was cleaner than she'd expected, like someone had been maintaining it more recently than the outside of the house suggested. The metal box opened with a satisfying click, and Claire's world tilted sideways. Stacks of $100 bills filled the interior, bundled with rubber bands gone brittle with age. She counted with trembling fingers. $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, more cash than Derek had seen in his wildest entrepreneurial fantasies. The first manila envelope contained property deeds that made her legs go weak. Not just this house, but an apartment building on Oak Street, a commercial lot downtown, and a historic brick building that housed 3 different shops, all in Grandma Eleanor's name. All now belonging to Claire. The rental income statements showed monthly payments that added up to more than Derek's annual salary in his best year. But the second envelope was where reality completely disconnected from everything Claire thought she knew about her family. Investment portfolios, stock certificates, bond statements from a firm in Columbus. Her coupon clipping, Social Security living grandmother had been playing the stock market for 40 years. The final portfolio value made Claire sink into a kitchen chair. $3.2 million. The third envelope held a letter in Grandma Eleanor's careful script. Dearest Claire, if you're reading this, you found my little insurance policy. I know everyone thinks I lived like a church mouse, but your grandfather taught me that quiet wealth is the safest kind. I watched you struggle with that husband of yours, watched him chip away at your confidence piece by piece. Marcus has always landed on his feet. He'll do fine with that condo. But you, sweet girl, you've shown real backbone. You've survived things that would break weaker people. This house isn't the consolation prize everyone thinks it is. It's your foundation for the life you were meant to live. The properties will provide steady income. The investments will grow if you're smart about them. Don't let anyone make you feel small again. You're stronger than you know. P.S. There's one more surprise in the basement. Look for the loose brick behind the water heater. Claire read the letter 3 times before the words really sank in. Rich. She was actually, genuinely rich. The basement stairs creaked but held solid under her weight. Down in the cool, stone-walled space, she found shelves lined with mason jars of preserves, their handwritten labels dating back decades. Behind the old water heater, one brick wiggled when she touched it. Inside the small cavity was a velvet jewelry box and another note. These belong to my mother. Wear them when you're ready to claim your place in the world. The pearl necklace inside was museum quality, each pearl perfectly matched and lustrous. As Claire fastened it around her neck, something fundamental shifted in her posture. Her spine straightened, her shoulders pulled back. For the first time in years, she looked like someone who belonged in nice things. Her phone buzzed. Derek texting, "Stop being dramatic. Come home and we'll work something out with that dump." She deleted the message and blocked his number. The transformation happened faster than Claire had dared to hope. Professional cleaning crews, contractors, landscapers, she paid them all in cash, watching their attitudes change when she peeled hundreds off a roll like grocery money. The house responded to care like a neglected garden after rain. Hardwood floors emerged gleaming from under decades of grime. Windows sparkled, letting golden light flood rooms that had been dark for too long. The bones of the place were magnificent: high ceilings, original fixtures, architectural details that belonged in design magazines. Derek called obsessively the first 2 days, 37 missed calls that she ignored with increasing satisfaction. By day 3, he'd escalated to showing up in person, pounding on her restored front door like some deranged bill collector. "Claire, open this door right now. We need to talk about this like rational adults." She watched him from the upstairs window, this man who'd spent 5 years telling her she wasn't good enough, who'd thrown her away the moment she stopped being useful to his schemes. When Claire finally opened the door, Derek's angry expression melted into confusion. She stood framed in the doorway, wearing a tailored black dress she'd bought that morning, Grandma Eleanor's pearls gleaming at her throat, every hair in place. "What the hell happened to you?" Derek stared like she'd grown another head. "And what did you do to this place? It looks, actually, decent." "I'm making it livable," Claire said evenly. "It's my home now." Derek pushed past her into the living room, his calculating eyes taking in the restored space. The Persian rug lay perfectly centered now, surrounded by polished antique furniture and fresh flowers. Everything gleamed with care and money. "Okay, so maybe this isn't the total disaster we thought. We could probably flip it for good money, maybe 90-100,000 if we stage it right." Claire almost laughed. The rug under his muddy shoes was worth more than that. "I'm not selling, Derek." "Don't be stupid. We need the cash. My debts aren't going to disappear just because you decided to play house. Derek began his familiar pacing routine, hands gesturing wildly as his voice climbed toward that dangerous pitch she knew too well. You think you can just run away and start over? You're 37 years old with no real skills and no money. You need me, Claire. You've always needed me to handle the important stuff. But his words bounced off her like rain on glass. Claire watched this man who'd once terrified her with his rages, now looking small and desperate in her grandmother's elegant living room. Actually, Derek, I don't need you for anything anymore. Her voice stayed calm, almost conversational. I think it's time you left. Left? His face flushed that familiar purple. I'm not going anywhere until we settle this. You're still my wife, which means I'm entitled to half of whatever this place is worth. Claire walked to the mantelpiece and picked up the divorce papers that had arrived by courier that morning. My attorney might have different ideas about that. Derek snatched the legal documents, his eyes scanning frantically. You can't be serious. Divorce? Over what? Because I got frustrated and said some things I didn't mean? Because you threw me out like garbage, Claire said quietly. Because you spent 5 years telling me I was worthless. Because I finally realized I deserve better. Better? Derek's laugh cracked at the edges. Look around, Claire. This is still just an old house in a dying neighborhood. Your brother got the real prize, that downtown condo worth $500,000. You got the pity gift, and you're acting like you won the lottery. If only he knew how close to the truth that was. Claire kept her expression neutral as Derek waved the divorce papers like a surrender flag. Fine, you want a divorce, you'll get one, but I'm taking half of everything, including whatever we can squeeze out of this place. And when you're living in some studio apartment working retail, don't come crawling back to me. After Derek stormed out, rattling the restored windows with his exit, Claire poured herself champagne from the bottle she'd been saving. She curled up in the Victorian armchair that had probably belonged to her great-grandmother, watching sunset paint the walls gold. Her phone rang. Marcus, probably coached by Derek on what to say. Claire, what's this nonsense about divorce? Derek's really upset, and frankly, I think you're being unreasonable. Hello, Marcus. Lovely to hear from you, too. She kept her tone light, almost amused. Come on, Claire. Derek can be difficult, but you're married. You work things out. And this business about living in that old house, it can't be safe or practical. It's perfectly safe. I've had it professionally inspected and renovated. Renovated? Marcus's voice sharpened. Claire, please tell me you're not throwing money away trying to fix up that place. The property values in that neighborhood are terrible. Why are you really calling, Marcus? Claire asked, settling deeper into her comfortable chair. A pause. Look, Derek mentioned that maybe Grandma Eleanor left some things in that house. Family items, old jewelry, documents that should probably be shared between us as her grandchildren. It would be fair, don't you think? There it was. Derek had convinced Marcus there might be hidden treasure, hoping family pressure would work where his own demands had failed. What kind of things are you imagining? Claire asked innocently. I don't know exactly, but Derek said the house looked different when he saw it, more valuable than expected. Maybe there are antiques or collectibles that got overlooked during the estate inventory. Claire could practically hear the gears turning. If there was money involved, Marcus wanted his share. He'd always been that way, even as children. You know what? Why don't you come by tomorrow afternoon? Bring Derek if you'd like. I'll show you exactly what I found in Grandma Eleanor's house. The next afternoon, Claire prepared like she was hosting royalty. Navy blue suit, pearl necklace, every surface in the house polished to magazine perfection. She arranged tea service on the restored coffee table, genuine china, and a silver set she'd discovered in the dining room. When Marcus and Derek arrived, their expressions were priceless. The house's exterior had been completely restored, fresh paint, new shutters, professionally landscaped garden. Inside looked like something from Architectural Digest. Holy cow, Claire, Marcus breathed, stepping into the front hallway. This place is incredible. How did you afford this level of renovation? I found some resources I didn't know existed, Claire said simply, leading them into the living room. Derek's eyes were sharp with calculation as he took in the gleaming floors, the restored moldings, the carefully arranged antique furniture. This renovation cost serious money, $50,000 minimum. Where did you get that kind of cash? You wanted to know what I found, Claire said, settling gracefully into her chair. Well, gentlemen, I found quite a treasure. Claire poured tea with steady hands, enjoying how both men shifted nervously in their seats. They looked out of place in this refined room, like wolves who'd wandered into a palace. The property deeds were the first surprise, she said conversationally, laying the documents on the coffee table. Marcus leaned forward, his mouth falling open as he read. She owned all of this? He whispered. 4 income properties, monthly rental income of about $8,000. Claire sipped her tea like they were discussing the weather, but that was just the beginning. She placed the investment portfolio summary between them. The final number, $3.2 million, seemed to glow on the page. Derek grabbed the papers with shaking hands. This has to be fake. The old lady lived on Social Security and clipped coupons. Apparently, she was much more financially sophisticated than any of us realized. Claire said calmly. Oh, and Derek? Since you abandoned me before I discovered any of this, my lawyer assures me you have absolutely no claim to it. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Marcus stared at the investment documents, while Derek's face cycled through shock, rage, and something that looked like genuine panic. Claire, Derek's voice had completely changed. Gone was the bluster, replaced by desperate wheedling. Sweetheart, we need to discuss this rationally. I was stressed about money. You know how I get when I'm worried about finances. I didn't mean those harsh things I said. But Claire was already standing, smoothing her skirt with elegant composure. You meant every single word, Derek. For 5 long years, you meant every cruel word. She walked to the front door and held it open with gracious finality. Marcus, you received exactly what Grandma Eleanor intended, a lovely condo for your lovely life. Derek, you got precisely what you deserved. As they shuffled toward the exit, Derek turned back one final time. This isn't over, Claire. People like you don't just win. That's not how life works. Claire smiled, her hand resting on the doorframe of her beautiful, valuable, completely paid-for house. Apparently, that's exactly how life works. After the door closed, Claire walked back to her living room and kicked off her heels with a satisfied sigh. She curled up with a novel she'd been reading, a glass of excellent red close at hand. Outside, evening light painted Maple Street in shades of amber and gold. Children played on sidewalks while their parents tended gardens and called greetings to neighbors. This was a neighborhood where people built lives, not just killed time between disasters. Claire's phone buzzed with a text from her new lawyer. Divorce papers filed. Asset protection complete. Congratulations on your fresh start. She smiled and turned the page of her book. Tomorrow, she'd start looking into local charities, maybe take some investment classes, perhaps even travel to places she'd only dreamed about when she was married to a man who thought dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. For the first time in her adult life, Claire felt like the protagonist of her own story, instead of a supporting character in someone else's drama. And the best part? This was just the beginning.